Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging in as we wait for some people to sign in to the webinar. So today you're joining the webinar about demystifying the hiring international student process at Johns Hopkins University. I'm Jess Laubach. I'm from the Johns Hopkins Career Center. And joining me, I have two representatives from our Office of International Services who will be presenting today. I just wanted to quickly point out to you guys, if you look at the GoToWebinar toolbar that you have on your computer, there is a handout section. If you'd like to download the handout that goes along with this presentation, you can do so in that section. So that way, even after the presentation, you guys will have a reference to look at if you have any questions. Also at the end, we'll be unmuting everyone. So if you have any questions at the end, please feel free to ask them at that point. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues from the Office of International Services.
Hello, my name is Samhar Okbazian. I'm the Assistant Director at the Office of International Services here at Homewood. And here with me is...
Yes, I'm Scott King. I'm Director of International Students for the Office of International Services.
Okay. So we are very excited today to be able to speak with you all on this topic, because from time to time we get students asking us career-related questions, and we're happy to talk to employers directly. So on the first slide, we are talking about the different qualities that international students bring to you as employers here in the U.S. So when you're dealing with international students, sometimes it may be a little bit intimidating to be talking about visa, sponsorship, etc. But there are so many qualities that international students or graduates bring to the table. And some of them include, the fact that they're the best and the brightest, similar to what, some of our students that go to study abroad. And most often they are very independent group of students, and they're highly motivated. So that's why they come here to study in the U.S. And they're very good in terms of adapting to change and to new environments. So you have, a very good plus on that aspect. And, most of the time you're talking, when you're dealing with international students, they have multiple language abilities. So in the minimum, they're either bilingual or, multilingual. So you have, the language class also that you can consider when you're trying to hire international students. And that helps you as employers if you're trying to expand your markets or you're trying to explore different markets outside the U.S. You might take advantage of their knowledge and connections in those different markets. And they could be very ideal, particularly for small to mid-sized employers. So those are some of the qualities that we see here from our side when we talk to international students.
Yeah. Do you mind if I add something really quick?
Yeah, sure.
So I just wanted to say also the international students really take advantage of the services that the Career Center offers. So really they're the first ones to notice a job posting. They always go to the events. So I think you're really increasing your applicant pool by encouraging international students to apply to your positions, especially through our Career Center.
Yeah. And one thing that I might want to add to that is, and this comes from, personal experience dealing with international students. This is not to insult, the domestic workforce here, but international students tend to appreciate, the opportunities that you provide to them, and they tend to stay a little bit longer at, the offers that they get, and it may be worth it for the employer to consider international students. So some of the offers that students get are for limited term type of opportunities or internships, or sometimes practicum schools. So for those types of opportunities, students can utilize what we call curricular practical training, or CPT. CPT is approved by the school, in our case by Johns Hopkins, particularly the Office of International Services. It can be obtained very quickly because the processing timeline for CPT is short. As long as we have all the information that we need, we can process the CPT I-20 and issue it right away. In order for a student to obtain a CPT, the internship must be related to the student. to the student's field of study, and this is vetted by the academic advisor because we ask for the academic advisor's approval to be able to authorize for CPT. In order to process a CPT I-20, we also need the offer letter from the employer, which should come in a standard offer letter format with the begin date and end date, the number of hours, whether it's part-time or full-time, and a brief summary of the tasks that the students will perform. CPT is available after the students are enrolled for 1 academic year. For us, it's the fall and the spring semesters because we're a semester-based school, excluding summer, of course. And lastly, but not least, we as an office have the position that, for unpaid internships included, we want the students to obtain CPT in order to prevent wage and hour rule violations. So for that reason, we highly recommend that the students obtain CPT. And the process here is pretty straightforward and very easy to process. So with that, the second type of employment authorization that students can obtain for any employment opportunities is the optional practical training. As the name indicates, it's optional, so students can use a portion of this OPT while they're still pursuing their studies, or they can save it up all, to be used after completion of their studies. The initial 12 months of OPT does not require a job offer or an employer, at least at the time of application. It requires, though, that the students work in their field of study, but the employer does not have the burden of determining that. So the students know what kind of positions that they need to look for and what kind of opportunities that they can accept. OPT is not employer or job specific, so students have the flexibility to work for as many employers as they like, and they can easily change jobs without any hassle. So during the OPT, 12 months of standard OPT, the employer does not need to do anything in terms of sponsoring the student or the graduate. OPT takes about 90 days to be processed because it's done by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS. But the Office of International Services does assist the students when they are preparing their applications. So we walk them through the process step by step, so there's no any issue or any surprise at the end in terms of getting their documentation from USCIS. There's no documentation needed from the prospective employer. Said that already. However, students are required to report their employment once they gain employment through a form that we provide to them online. With that, I'm going to give the mic to Scott King to talk to us about the STEM current rules and anything that's changing.
Yeah. Thank you, Samhar. If you are hiring students who are receiving a degree in the sciences, technology, engineering, or mathematics, they're eligible for an extended period of optional practical training beyond the 12 months that is available to any student who has received a degree and is in an F1 visa status. STEM OPT has been around since 2008. However, court case threw out some of the provisions because the Immigration Services had processed it improperly. And about a little less than 2 weeks ago, new rules on the STEM OPT came out. The new rules are actually an improvement over the old one. The Obama administration had been looking at ways to expand STEM OPT, so when they needed to rewrite the policies due to the court order, they put in a lot of changes that had been promoted for a couple of years. First of all, one great thing is a STEM extension allows an additional 24 months for students to be on optional practical training in F1 status and eligible for an employer to hire without any additional paperwork. So you potentially could have 3 years, with minimal employer paperwork. It's been a slight change there. So it would allow you to have someone with a STEM degree, an engineer, a math major, somebody in biology, for up to 3 years with you only filling out minimal reports that come to our office on that. The couple of conditions on it is STEM OPT is only available to students who signed up for the government's E-Verify I-9 process. And it does require that they have a paying job. It's not available for volunteer work. It does take 90 days or more to process the AD for this, but there is a clause that when a student has filed their application, they can continue to work for up to 150 days while immigration is processing it. I think the USCIS realizes they are not promptly adjudicating applications, so they're allowing this continuous employment on that. The old rules for STEM OPT had really no employer involvement except providing their E-Verify number. However, the new rules do require that the employer sign off on a training program. There is a new government form that has been developed, an I-983, which is the student's responsibility to complete in conjunction with working with this employer, and the employer does sign off on it. I will say that the new I-983 is a government form, unfortunately. It looks a little daunting when you first look at it. However, probably 2/3 of the form is information that the student needs to put in. The main thing the employer has to do is provide what the training objectives are, job objectives on that, how the student's going to be supervised, and then agree that they will abide by wage and hour rules, that they are paying the F1 students under the same conditions that they are paying their U.S. workers. You don't need to document this, and my experience is most companies have very strongly established wage and hour policies so that this is not a problem on that. There is a clause in it as well that should the Department of Labor feel there is a violation, they can have an employer visit for students on STEM OPT. But if you read the information that goes along with it, it's only when employers are willfully appearing to violate this, paying F1 students half the wages of, say, their U.S. students, that they would come and do a check. So I don't think, we are an employer here of many students on STEM OPT, and I don't think anyone here is going to have trouble signing off on these forms. But it is a little step you need to do, but it does give you, as I said, up to 3 years that a student can work for you on STEM OPT before you have to worry about any other future visas for them. And particularly with the situation today with the H-1B visa, it could give you 3 to 4 times that you could get the student in that pool to get the H-1 visa for someone that you want to continue working for you. So you want to go on about a little bit about the H-1?
Yeah. So once the student exhausts the, the OPT and the STEM, the next step is to think about, other visa options if you want them to continue to work for you. And one of the most frequently used visa option is the H-1B visa. That visa is employer sponsored, and the worker may work only for the approved employer and in the job for which the H-1B was approved. What that means is that H-1B is, unlike OPT, it's job specific and employer specific. So even if the student is moving from one job to another with the same employer, there's some paperwork that you need to file to amend the H-1B petition that was approved by USCIS. So H-1B visa is available for 3 years at a time. You can utilize it twice, so you can have the person working for you for a maximum of 6 years. Every fiscal year, there is 65,000 H-1B visas available. And for the past several years, the quota has been met on the first day or the first week when they become available. So, and I'm sure most of you are very familiar with the quota. Most universities and research institutions are, however, exempt from this quota, and other nonprofits and for-profit type of organizations are not exempt. They're subject to the quota. In addition to the 65,000 visas, there are 20,000 H-1B additional visas available for students graduating from U.S. institutions with a higher degree, master's or above. So they can get counted towards the 65,000, and then if they don't get it, they get counted to the 20,000 visas on that.
And it might be good, we didn't put this on the slide, but to understand the basics of what an H-1B visa requires. They call them temporary employees in specialty occupations. And like a lot of government designations, it sounds a little more limiting than it is. You can obtain an H-1B visa for an individual that you have in a position that requires the degree that the individual holds. And they're somewhat broad about this. Especially as for beginning level bachelor's degrees and higher. They have to have at least a bachelor's degree in a specific field or set of fields. And I've done H-1Bs before where I've connected several different fields to justify a particular candidate, and that you must be, and the position must require the background of that student. There are also certain wage conditions, but they're really fair wage conditions designed to make sure that both the H-1B holders and the U.S. workers are treated fairly. There's a labor condition agreement you have to sign where you certify you will provide working conditions, pay, benefits to the F-1 worker that are equivalent to that of, I'm sorry, the H-1B worker, equivalent to that of the U.S. workers. This is not a do-it-yourself visa, and it is something that many firms do have individuals who are trained within them, who are paralegals or equivalent who can do them, or you would have to go to outside counsel. The cost for that varies, but I think a lot of employers, for a good employee, just agree that this is one of the costs of doing business. Turnover is probably cost you more than what it would cost for an attorney's fees for an H-1B visa.
Yeah. One thing that I also want to highlight when talking about H-1B visa is that, if you have not done this before, you don't have to test the labor market. You don't have to prove that, there's no able, willing, and qualified U.S. workers. What you file is the labor condition application, which is way, easier and faster to get when compared to when you're doing the PERM process, which is what you do for the permanent residency application. So if you are dealing with citizens of certain countries, such as Canada, Mexico, Australia, Chile, or Singapore, there are additional, visa categories that you might, utilize, and those are the TN E3 for Australians and the H1B1 for Chile and Singapore citizens. The rules for these vary, and you probably need to consult with a qualified immigration counsel in order to determine eligibility, of the candidates that you are recruiting for this positions or the visas. So the last one is, if you're trying to hire someone, or if you already hired someone, if you exhausted the H-1B1 or the H-1B visa, and you want them to permanently, stay in the U.S. without any visa hassle, you can definitely consider to file for a permanent residency or adjustment of status based on employment. To get to permanent residency through employment, the person must either have outstanding qualifications or have an employer who can prove that there is no able, willing, or qualified U.S. workers available. So it's in this case where you have to go through the perm process, test the labor market, and make sure that there's no one available in order for you to be able to claim that, you know, we want this person and we want, you know, the person to get a green card. The process is very challenging. I've been engaged in some applications for permanent residency through employment. It's very time-consuming, expensive, and not guaranteed. So it's never for an amateur, and you probably need to talk to an immigration attorney and explore your options and make sure that you're well prepared if you are going to file for permanent residency for an international candidate for this.
Well, I think one thing very good to keep in mind, though, is between their F1 optional practical training and an H, you would have could have between 7 and 9 years for this employee to be here without having to go through the entire permanent residence process. Yeah. And you know, so there's a lot of time there to figure out what long-term status you want. And I think especially for a brand new employee to a firm, we'd love all our new employees to stay there forever, but this is still a very long time with not a lot of effort on the part of the employer.
And I just want to add, so if anyone decides that you want to post a position that accepts OPT or CPT or that sponsors visas, definitely reach out to us at the Career Center and let us know, because that's something that we can you know, do additional advertising for and make sure the international students know, because you know, there are some difficulties with navigating and finding those positions, so we would love to get the information out to them. So if you want to let us know, you can always email me. My email address is recruit@jhu.edu. Again, that's recruit@jhu.edu. So if there are no questions at this time, you can always email us, so we'll be happy to get back to you. Again, if you want to email the Career Center, you can email recruit@jhu.edu. And we're always in communication with the Office of International Services, so we're happy to pass along your question or answer the question ourselves to the best of our ability.
Yeah, our offices are adjacent to each other in the building.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone so much for joining us. Again, please find the handout that's attached, and we're happy to talk to you at any point.
Thank you.